You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back. It is Monday. Things are hot and heavy here on the network. Yes, it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as on the network upon which all of you folks are binging these days. Reminder, get your name in the hat before the end of the month if you want to participate, have a chance to win our final Pro Trading Crate of the year. You also want to join the upcoming Vol Deathmatch 2.0, awesome pro Q&As, live streams, goodies, giveaways, all sorts of fun. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the old crypto hot seat this week. I'm pleased to welcome back on our old pal, Mr. Greg Magadini from Amberdata. Mr. Greg, welcome back, sir. How are things in your neck of the woods? Are you living through the polar vortex like the rest of us?
Hey, what's up, Mark? Thank you for having me on. The weather is amazing where I am right now. We don't have any snow. It normally snows here in Boise, but it's nice and warm, so I can't complain about that. The only winter I'm seeing right now is sort of on the crypto charts.
A wee bit of a crypto winter sneaking in there, sir.
Sneaking in there during the Santa rally. What's going on?
All right. Let's find out, listeners, as we head on into the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the action in the world's leading crypto asset. Yep, we're talking about the big dog, which is BTC, perhaps a wee bit smaller. Greg letting the cat out of the bag there at the top of the show. It's not quite crypto winter, but it's feeling a little frosty out there, Mr. Greg. Dare I say it, perhaps winter is coming to beat up that oft abused cliche at that point. Perhaps the White Walkers, we can glimpse them on the hill in the horizon. Coming into the start of the show, listeners, Bitcoin was hanging out a little bit north of 86,000, 86,280. That's down almost exactly 4,000 points, 4,007 if you want to get precise from where we were on the show last week. So Mr. Greg, once again, back below 90K perhaps. White walkers on the horizon. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting environment. So we just had the FOMC rate cut last week. Everyone was expecting that. But what we also had was a really divided Fed. So you could call it some sort of hawkish rate cut. I really think crypto is moving or is following stocks and is moving with sort of the macro landscape as opposed to crypto specific sector. So in terms of the regulatory environment, everything is as bullish as it could be for crypto overall from regulation standpoint, product launch standpoint, ETF flows and all that good stuff. The thing that's kind of uncertain is the access to credit for risk assets and the AI CapEx boom and how all that's going to work out, and governments refinancing deficits and how the long end of the bond market is working out, things like that. That's my thesis. So I think that's what Bitcoin is following. And so we're seeing some weakness today on the back of a divided Fed. And so that's the general big picture narrative that I'm seeing, because otherwise, seasonally speaking, this should be a pretty good time for Bitcoin prices in terms of, again, regulatory landscape and the flows into the products. Everything should be constructive, but it's not. So that's how I'm viewing it from a big picture.
It might be a fun question of the week, Mr. Greg, if we can get that live before the end of the show. A crypto question of the week. Is winter coming? Are the White Walkers approaching? Are we here? Is it on the cusp? Are we all hanging out, hunkering down in Winterfell, listeners, just to beat that to death while the winter storms rage upon us? It might be a fun crypto question of the week. We'll see, Greg. We'll see if we can get the folks to weigh in before the end of the show. But while we get there, listen, let's go around the horn. Let's fire up the old Amberdata machine. Remember, you can do this for yourselves. Pro.amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you did that, you'd have access to this cool GUI and all sorts of other cool stuff. You would see that vol coming back to earth a little bit right now, a slightly 7-day vol, 51.6 on the show last week, 48.85. This week, 30-day vol, 47 on the show last week, 44 and a third right now. So coming in a little bit out there on the 30-day vol front as well. And where the hodlers hang out, 47.5, 47.35. So kind of unchanged there. Mr. Greg, are you noticing any interesting nuggets, any interesting clues in the vol tea leaves this week, sir?
Yeah, I think if you look at the past 12 months, like the rolling 12 months of the 25 delta put versus at the money vol, or the ratio of the 25 delta call versus at the money vol. So the call wing is downward sloping. So, 25 delta call versus at the money vol is about 4 vol points cheaper, or 4% cheaper, on 30 days out, whereas the put wings, call it about 8% more expensive. Not vol points, but like a ratio, 8% of the ratio of at the money. So call it like 3.5 points or something like that. That's really interesting. We've really seen this trend pick up since September, but the first half of the year was calls were more expensive and puts were basically flat. So the options market really since September and August has priced in put skew and priced down call skew. And that's really when the IBIT volume exploded. So the IBIT volume exploded basically something like 400% from August to today. That's really when the hockey stick happened. And the vol surface at that same time repriced by making puts more expensive and calls cheaper. So again, traditional finance flows are really what hit the market in terms of the option volatility surface. So I think that's an interesting backdrop. That also tells me that a lot of the IBIT holders are well hedged into a downward move. So we might actually not get the same type of downside explosion in realized, because we're not going to get the same type of panic sellers if everyone is hedged. So that's something to keep in mind, something that's interesting. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. If we look at the gamma exposure profile on Deribit, what's the level where everyone is going to be flipping here? And so dealers are short a lot of gamma at $85,000 strike. That is the end of the year downside strike that dealers are positioned in. The end of the year upside strike that dealers are net short positioned in is the 100K strike. So obviously we're pretty far from 100K. Let's see how 85K holds, because I do think that's the inflection point between more downside versus consolidation. I like to call 1x2 trade. Vol's pretty high overall here. If things recover, vol comes down. And if we get that downside crash risk, well, the 1x2 is not going to get hurt by that. So that's how I'm viewing these markets. And those are the interesting trends that I've been seeing.
You're talking about gamma exposure. I just saw this pop up in the chat. I would normally save it for the crypto questions, but let's get to it right now, Mr. Greg, because you're kind of touching on it. This comes from Mr. Nichols. He wants to know, can Greg explain the shadow term structure on Amberdata? So this is we don't get a chance to get to this too often, but it is a cool tool you folks offer. Really quick for Mr. Nichols and everybody else, what the heck are we talking about? What is shadow term structure?
Yes. So the shadow is really just a time lapse. So the idea is that you can see where's the term structure today versus some time in the past. So you can pick out, a week ago or 3 hours ago or a month ago. And you can compare today's term structure versus that historical shadow. We could have just said time lapse, but shadow sounds cooler. So that's kind of
shadow sounds way cooler, and dare I say it, much more ominous, sir. Yeah, time lapse is for the birds. Shadow term structure. That kind of goes along the lines of what we were talking about, the White Walkers, the shadows coming, Mordor. It all kind of blends together. I see a theme coming for this show, Mr. Greg out there. So great question. Who was that? Mr. Nichols, a great and indeed a timely question. Let's keep rolling. Let's see what the Skew is telling us. If you're firing up the old Amberdata machine, you're looking at the Skew, what's it telling you right now in Bitcoin? Well, it's looking a little bit more dire than it was this time last week. Maybe no surprise, but not exactly winter is coming levels, at least not yet. 7-day Skew, negative 4.9, exactly a point lower this week, negative 5.9 as we kicked off the show. 30-day Skew, where most of you are going to hang out, negative 6 on the show last week, negative 6 3/4. So again, tilting a little bit more bearish, but nothing earth-shaking there. And on the hodler front, negative 4.6 on the 180-day Skew, negative 4 3/4. So again, bearish. So if you've been kind of lamenting the loss of the upside premium in Bitcoin, that's been going on for a while. So we're already kind of past that now on the show, but getting a wee bit more bearish out there. Mr. Greg, what is the Skew telling you out there right now? Dare I say it, is winter coming for all of us, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest interesting trend, and what you just touched on, was the long dated Skew becoming priced in a negative fashion in terms of risk reversal. The puts more expensive than the calls. That was a persistently bullish trend for basically forever, basically since the beginning of launching Genesis Volatility, minus like the FTX banking crisis and stuff like that. So the repricing and the reshaping of a volatility term structure, a volatility surface where the Skew is priced all the way out to 180 days and beyond. That to me is the flows of IBIT. That's very interesting. That's something to look at. In the short term, Bitcoin's really interesting. The Skew isn't sticky. Like, it can flip to positive, flip to negative, flip back to positive, flip back to negative. It isn't like the equity space where there's a negative put Skew for the most part that you can rely on. It just depends how negative it is. But Bitcoin's different. Bitcoin's a little bit more like gold, and it really follows spot prices. So if you're trading that risk reversal, there's usually some good ins and outs around that. So yeah, those are kind of the things that I'm seeing. But in terms of the big picture, I think upside volatility is going to be squished going forward, because the calls are being sold onto it, and people are not going to be expecting that same type of explosiveness that we've gotten in the past with FOMO moves higher.
All right, Greg, we have the flash poll live right now. Our crypto question of the week for the audience just went live. Is winter coming, or is it time to buy the dip, Greg? We will find out a little bit later in the show what our audience has to say. But now let's keep rolling out to a product a lot of you might be using to buy that dip. It's IBIT at about a 49 even when we kicked off the show, down about 2 1/3 points from where it was this time last week. That ADV is still hanging out at a pretty robust level, 957,000 contracts a day. That's down slightly, about 43,000. Again, it is December. We're supposed to see these numbers coming back to earth a little bit, but this is one of the weirder Decembers in recent memory. Just look at VIX. VIX is still averaging 1 million contracts a day in the middle of December. It is not supposed to be doing that, listeners. This December, kind of unlike many others we've seen in years past, putting up almost 750,000 contracts already today. Looks like it's probably going to threaten that ADV, if not quite get there today. We will see. The vol, 30-day vol in IBIT right now, again, at about a 45, which is almost exactly what we're seeing on Deribit. Again, it just shows you how much these two products are lining up, if not the fact that IBIT is now the one leading the dance over Deribit. That is down 1 point from what it was this time last week. If you're wondering what are folks slinging out there in IBIT land today, it's the DEES 52s, Greg. Looks like it might be a DEES 52-54 vertical. I'll have to see. Either way, about 24,000 of the DEES 52s going up for 23 cents. That is potentially closing, listeners. And the 54 is going up 18,000 times for about 7 cents. So if they're taking that vertical off, they're only getting about 16 cents for it. So interesting stuff out here. Mr. Greg, anything catching your eye out here in IBIT? And are you a big fan of the DEES 52s for 23 cents, sir?
Well, it's interesting. I think last week we talked about the short put. And that actually worked out pretty nicely. If you took it off,
not a bad do.
That's great. There was a nice little out there. And now this week it's getting kind of in the money. Listen, if we are truly in the range, if this 85K holds and it's range bound, then I think the 52-54s and the year are a great vertical spread to own. I wouldn't be surprised if you get max payout on that. If this is, really the Santa rally and this is kind of the dip of the Santa rally, yeah, that's a great punt. So I don't hate it. I wouldn't sell it. I don't think there's a reason to sell that thing.
You don't want that whopping 16 cents in your back pocket. No. I will say this is not going all the way out to the end of the year. This is just monthly expiration. So you got till the end of the week. So maybe that colors your love for it a little bit less, Mr. Gray.
Yes, that does curl. Yeah. The December 19th. Yeah, that's
a little bit of a lot to turn around. It can get there. We've seen IBIT do that, but maybe a little bit less desirable. Now Greg's like, sold to you. Give me that 16 cents.
But the end of the year one, I'm looking at that, pricing it up 34 cents for December 31st. I'd rather own that thing. I think that thing could pay out. But yeah, that's a good point. In terms of, what happens from here, I really think, let's see how this 85K holds. If this doesn't hold, though, I definitely think there's more downside. And if you're looking at sort of the tech names right now, like some of those SMCI, things like that. If there's weakness in those AI tech names, I think that bleeds into crypto. MicroStrategy, it's been bleeding a lot lately. I think those types of things reinforce the theme of potential more downside.
Let's see what the theme is. Greg, when you're talking downside, we got to get to your beloved product. I said it's for degenerates. It's paying off for the degenerates to the downside right now. We're seeing MSTR get drubbed, get annihilated. When that's happening, listeners, levered MSTR, aka MSTU, aka the product, solely for Greg and the degenerates out there, getting shellacked as well. $10 exactly when we kicked off the show, probably below that now. Down 265 from where it was this time last week, putting up about 10,000 contracts today. The ADV, 36,000, down about 9,000. But Greg, at this point, they're going to erase that reverse split. Pretty soon they're going to have to reverse split it again. This thing's been getting taken to the woodshed. Have you been slinging any MSTU since we last chatted, sir?
So I haven't put on new positions in the MSTU, but again, I loved selling that upside. Just as a reminder to everyone, you have this high volatility asset. The downside moves come from a higher denominator, and then the upside moves come from a lower denominator. So the tracking error is huge. If we look at December 15th of last year, MSTU, adjusted for reverse splits was $165. So this thing, it's basically like 7.5% of what it's worth exactly a year ago. So it lost 93%. this thing will always lose 93%. So that's kind of not always, but you get what I mean. I'm being a little bit exaggerating.
Greg guarantees you 93% a year to the downside if you trade MSTU. That's his personal guarantee to you.
It's meant to the tracking error is just too hard to recover from. So that's why I like selling the upside here on these types of products to finance my upside on some good old physical Bitcoin.
Greg, looks like somebody's listening to you today in MSTU. The hot trade in MSTU today is 2,100 of the March 20s paper hitting the bid on those for about 87 cents. So not a ton of money, but then again, it's 2x out of the money and they're getting 87 cents for that. So does that float your boat, sir?
Yeah, trades like that float my boat.
It looks like somebody may be buying the 11 puts in Jan for $2.30. So you could take some of the sting of that 230 off the table, listeners, if you maybe sell a little bit of upside in March. So there you go. It's like somebody might be up to that today. Looking at that downside right now, listeners, and other M-related names, Mara coming back to earth a little bit as well, down about 90 cents, $10.90 is where we're hanging out at the start of the show. Putting up 185,000 contracts right now. The ADV right around 280, down about 17,000 from this time last week. If you're listening to Options Oddities, we've been talking about some fun in Mara, not just the wheel trade, but of course some upside flies and other interesting things like that. Again, check out the Pro if you're intrigued with a little bit of wheeling and dealing in Mara. Speaking of wheeling and dealing, we got some action today on the 12s, going up about 15,000 times, expiring this week. 12 is a bit of a ways to go. Average price for these, about 13 cents. So if you want to take a nibble, I guess that's your cheap flyer. If you want to get down more at the money range, the 11s are trading about 10,000 times today for 40 cents. So if you think Mara can turn it around by the end of the week, maybe you like those. Worth noting it's opening on the 11s, maybe potentially closing on the 12s. Somebody getting the heck out of Dodge. Greg, in the past, I know you haven't been the biggest Mara trader, I should say. Anything catching your eye in Maryland this week, sir?
Yeah, what I think is interesting about Mara is that, it's a 100 vol stock. And, ETH is a 75 vol stock. But if I look at Mara, the range of it, if I look at the range, let's just say, since 2013, 155 to 35. Well, I guess the 35-cent period was a big range. But this thing seems to me like it's always between $10 and $25 is what I'm trying to get at. And it's a 100 vol asset. So maybe like the day-to-day move is high, but this thing doesn't seem to trend enough to really capture a big range of prices. I wonder if there's an interesting type of trade, maybe short to long-term stuff, hedged by long to short-term stuff, something like that. But unlike crypto, like Solana or Ethereum, where trends really happen and the range of prices is extreme, I think Mara is relatively stable for such a high volatility asset.
Yeah, that's what made it so attractive for us on the wheel side, because you're right, you're getting a lot of vol to sell options out there, and range-wise, it was pretty range-bound, kind of hanging out below that range right now. Usually it would bounce off the 15 handle pretty reliably, and you're right, drift in that 15 to low 20s range pretty reliably, and then this year a little bit below it now, but it's been a pretty attractive wheel candidate for much of the year, so interesting stuff. Let's see what else is attractive, listeners, as we head on out to the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
Let's get on out to the altcoin universe. Speaking of altcoin, our chat debating whether one of our pro members should buy more Solana here, and the consensus has been no. Wait till it dips a little lower, maybe below the par strike. So interesting stuff. Our chat even saying maybe hold off. Maybe they're thinking the winter is coming. We shall see. Obviously looking a little bit lower on the old top 10 from a market cap perspective this week, listeners. Last week cost you about $15.5 billion to break into the top 10. That got you to our old pal Cardano. This week, still see Cardano hanging out at number 10, but looking a little bit lighter. $13.8 billion is what it cost you to break in this week. Number 9, our old pal Doge, $21.5 billion. Number 8, it's Tron, $26.3 billion. Number 7, we were just talking about it. It's Solana hanging out pretty close to 125 at the start of the show, which is a level I know people were nibbling at in the past, myself included. The question now becomes whether you do more nibbling or you wait till perhaps a lower level if you are a Solana bull. And it seems like right now the consensus in our pro chat at least is you do a little bit of waiting. Number 7, Solana 70.2 billion. Number 6, USD coin 78.5 billion. Number 5, it's XRP. Bill's wife will not be happy. Sub $2 for XRP, coming in at 114.75 billion worth of market cap. Number 4, it's BNB 117.3. Number 3, it's Tether 186.25 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, because of course it is 353.9 billion. And the big dog coming back to earth a little bit, Bitcoin 1.7 trillion worth of market cap. I know a lot of you are coming to the dance for ETH, so let's get out there right now. ETH looking a little bit lighter than it was this time last week. Last week we were right above the 3,000 level, 31.21 to be precise. Given that back up, breaking back through that psychologically important 3,000 level, at least for right now. 29.53 is where we were hanging out to kick off the show. That's down about 170 handles from where we were this time last week. Mr. Greg, obviously ETH is a big one to watch for a lot of our listeners out there. What's catching your eye in ETH land right now?
Yeah, I mean, from a delta perspective, ETH below 3,000 is not, I'm not buying that. I think there's probably more downside. ETH above 4,000, I think is a buy. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. There's a lot of momentum, I think, in both directions to ETH. So in terms of vol, I mean, ETH vol in the kind of 70 area, we've been really stuck here for a long time. I think that's pretty interesting. Back in the heyday, if we go back to 2020, 2021, ETH could hit 200 vol. So this thing has a lot of room to run in terms of overall volatility. I like to look at ETH in terms of pricing Solana. So we chatted about Solana. I know we'll probably talk about that as well, but I think there's an interesting relationship there because historically, ETH has a volatility premium to Bitcoin, but Solana has a volatility premium to ETH. And today, those two prices in terms of vol, Solana and ETH, are very similar. So I think there's probably some interesting relative vol there, but I think ETH volatility has the chance to pick up. So therefore, I think Solana volatility's got even more chance to pick up, so to speak. So that's really what's catching my eye. Yeah, I think those are the main themes right now.
Let's talk about that vol out there in ETH land, listeners. Was a 74 and a third on our 7-day vol last week, coming back to earth a little bit, 71.5 right now. On the 30-day vol, it was exactly 70.5 on the show last week, 66.8 today. So vol again coming back to earth a little bit in ETH land. Where the hodlers hang out, 6 months and beyond, 70 exactly on the show last week, 68 and 2/3. So vol pretty much coming in slightly across the board in ETH land. Skew wise, looking slightly more pessimistic than last week, which again makes sense. We have broken through 3K in the other direction this week, so you're going to see that reflected in the skew. Weekly skew -5 last week, -6.5. This week, 30-day skew -5.6, coming down slightly, -5.9 as of showtime. And the hodler skew maybe looking a little bit more dire, -1.3 on the show last week, -1.9. Greg, for a little while, ETH was kind of the lone bastion where you could still find a little bit of juice to the upside, because Bitcoin has been out of that run for a while now, but you can still get a little juice to the upside in ETH. Those days no longer, sir. -2 almost on the long-term skew. What's catching your eye on the skew front in ETH, sir?
Yeah, so when we're testing the $5,000 price range, like the new all-time high, it makes sense that there's some positive skew there, because getting a breakout into the new all-time highs, like who knows how high ETH could go. We're nowhere near that. So that's why I was saying, I like to own ETH above 4,000, but I don't want to own it below 3,000. And so I think below 3,000, we're kind of subject to some downside risks. ETH is a tech stock, so to speak. So ETH, in my mind, Web3 technology, all the DeFi protocols, decentralized finance, all that good stuff, very highly correlated to risk on. And Web3 is sort of the new internet beyond Web2. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So the fact that we're priced into negative skew, a lot of it's going to be part of the traditional fund flows that we've seen in IBIT. But the other part of it is that, yeah, there's just downside risk to Ethereum. Should there be any sort of risk off catalyst. And unless we're above 5,000 or, threatening it, there's no reason to pay for upside volatility in my mind.
Interesting. So ETH above the 4K level, you're a little bit excited. You like the upside. Below 3K, you're not feeling the love, sir.
Exactly.
Interesting. Do you agree with those levels out there, listeners? Hit us up. Let us know. Speaking of levels, circle back down a wee bit, listeners. 75.80 when we kicked off the show puts it down about 7 3/4 handles from where it was this time last week. So if you're selling some puts in Circle, maybe you're sweating a little bit this week. Putting up 121,000 contracts today against an ADV of 147,000. That's down about 6,000 from this time last week. 30-day vol 65, down about 5 points from where it was this time last week. The hot option out there in Circle land, at least this morning, listeners, are the 68 puts expiring this week, Mr. Greg, going up about 7,300 times for a little over half a buck, about 53 cents. So, vol's coming back to earth, but maybe that excites some folks. These are going out this week, listeners. So you could still get about half a buck for the 68 puts. Mr. Greg, are you saying sold to you on those puts, sir?
No, not the short term. I'm a put seller, but I like selling the long-term puts just because there's so much juice in them. And then I use that to buy the call spread, the long-term call spread. So yeah, I'm definitely a long-term bag holder of Circle. I'm doing that through option plays, sell the put to finance the call spread. And I want to do that far out enough to really capture that high volatility premium because I do think there's going to be a Vega repricing lower at some point. So today, I want a lot of that Vega exposure in Circle is the long story short.
Not a ton of Vega with the put going out this week, sir. But you're getting half a buck, so you can't complain too much, I suppose. And you can put 31 cents of that back to work, Mr. Greg, buying about 7,000 of the 90s, also expiring this week. So there you go. Get paid 22 cents for that risk reversal. That sounds like free money to me, Mr. Greg. How can you go wrong buying the 90s? Expiring this week, listeners. That's what's lighting it up out there in Circle. ETHZilla, spoiler alert, down quite a bit, $7, actually like $6.90 right now. That puts it down nearly $4, $3.85. So our old pal ETHZilla kind of wearing it out there. We were just talking about this in our chat. They were debating whether to buy more Solana right around this level, 125 3/4 when we kicked off the show. It's down from 134.5, down about 8 3/4 handles. The consensus right now is no more here, at least wait for a little bit lower level. Do you agree with that, listeners? Or are you scooping up more Solana with both hands right here? XRP, like we said, breaking through the 2 handle, unfortunately, for Bill's wife and all the rest of the XRP holders out there. It was 208 on the show last week, $1.91, so down 17 cents this week. Dogecoin, 14.2 cents last week, 12.9, so down about 1.3 cents. Litecoin, 83.5 last week, 77 1/3, so down a little over $6 on the week. Listeners, Cardano, 43 cents last week, 38 cents this week, so down about a nickel. Polkadot, 212 last week, 188 this week, so down nearly a quarter. And everyone's beloved Shiba Inu, 1,000,000 zeros, 843 last week. This week, 1,000,000 zeros, 788. So even those lug nuts getting a little bit out of reach on the Shiba Lambos. Mr. Greg, anything else you want to touch on in the world of the altcoin universe before we reveal the results of our crypto poll, sir?
Yeah, I'm curious to see the results. Just to touch on again on Solana, I do think Solana is interesting play because Solana not only has decent crypto beta exposure, but I think it has market share capture exposure against ETH. So ETH, $350 billion market cap, give or take. Solana, $70 billion market cap, give or take. So, what is that, 5-1? So that's pretty interesting. Solana's market share could just come, so Solana's price appreciation could just come from a capturing of market share, regardless of crypto going up from here. So I think that's an interesting play. Again, the volatilities are similarly priced when historically there's more Solana volatility versus ETH. So yeah, those are the interesting components to me.
Interesting stuff, listeners. Speaking of interesting, let's find out now what you folks think in our crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions, where you folks ask questions just like you already did today on the show. Sometimes we shine the spotlight back on you like we did earlier in the episode. And Greg, we asked them quite simply, is winter coming for crypto? Are the White Walkers on the horizon, or is this sell-off overdone? We made it very simple. Winter is coming, or buy the dip. And Mr. Greg, this has only been live for about, 20 odd minutes, half an hour or so, but how do you think the early voting is shaping up, sir?
Well, I think there is a recency bias, given that today is crashing, that it's going to be winter is coming.
Well, it's like you know our audience or something, Mr. Greg. Right now in the early voting, 2/3, 66%, are saying winter is coming, and only about a third right now saying buy the dip. Again, this just went live a little while ago, listeners. Do you agree? Disagree? At Options is the place to go to make your voice heard. All right, Mr. Greg, I can see you are stunned, appalled, shocked by those results, sir. We'll see how this evolves over the rest of the week. It is our crypto question of the week, after all, listeners. So we'll see if some of you hodlers dive in or if something else happens. In the meantime, Mr. Greg, sir, if folks want to go to check out what you have cooking in Amberdata, maybe they want to try out a little bit of shadow term structure for themselves, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, you can check out our website at pro.amberdata.io. So you can check out all the charts, browse the GUI, look at TradFi, crypto-related equities, as well as Deribit and all the CeFi venues, and Derive, the DeFi venue. So very excited about that. And then you can also check out our weekly newsletter, which is on Substack. You can go to amberDataDerivatives.substack.com.
There you go. Check them out, listener. You should be checking out that newsletter and everything else they have cooking, in addition to the GUI and everything else. Again, we just scratched the surface of what they have to offer. We don't even have time to even get to the shadow term structure. All this cool stuff lurking behind the scenes. Check it out for yourselves over there in Amberdata. And Mr. Greg, our chat has done the heavy lifting for us. They've researched the cost of lug nuts on a Lamborghini, and they are about $400. So I guess if everyone's, depending on how much Shiba Inu you have, if you sell a bunch of it, maybe you can buy a set of lug nuts for your Lamborghini, Mr. Greg. So there you go. The dream of the Shiba Lambo is alive, at least on the lug nuts for right now, listeners. So get on over there at Options and make your voice heard on our crypto question of the week and everything else we have cooking. We'll be back after the closing bell, listeners, to talk about all the activity lighting up the tape out there on the Hot Options Report. And then back again throughout the rest of the week with our usual array of content till we come back next Monday, the penultimate trading week of the year, also the penultimate episode of the Crypto Rundown for the year, which is wild. See you then. And of course, stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amberdata. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amberdata delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amberdata eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.